Hey, this is John. Welcome to part two of my 1953 CJ3a Willys Jeep restoration. Here, I'm going over the breakdown and some of the cleaning, although we'll get more in the cleaning in part three. The disassembly was actually probably some of the easiest stuff to do if the Jeep wanted to cooperate. There were some things that, let me just say this. If you're going to do something like this on something this old, get yourself at least a breaker bar, if not two, and a nice set of full-sided sockets, not those little star points. Because what I discovered was, even though the nut was maybe a little tight, those star points would just round the nuts off. So full-sided sockets were a definite plus. Again, I made an offer in my last video that if somebody is in the process or thinking about restoring a Jeep, I've got close to 1,000 detailed pictures of every part of the vehicle coming apart and going together. So if you got a question, let me know. I may be able to help you. This was pretty much as the Jeep as I got it. Obviously the tub was on top and the fenders, but the motor had been taken out almost, well, I guess a little over 40 years ago, and wasn't reinstalled, which was a plus and yet a curse. What else can I tell you? I had problems getting the rear leaf springs off because one of the mount points on the frame. I had to actually grind that mount point off and then reattach a new one, and that was a bit of a bear. Also, what else? The frame, the axles weren't that bad. I wound up repacking all of them. The transmission. See that? Well, if you back up, I don't know, or maybe I'll show it to you again. One of the problems that you run into with these Jeeps is that water, rain will hit the shift lever and go down the shift lever to the cup that enters into the body of the transmission. And then basically what you wind up doing is getting some water down in the transmission. And so there was a point later on, you'll see, where I wound up pulling the cover off the top of the transmission because the gears were very tight. And I discovered that all of my gears had basically rusted together. So I had to deal with that. And one of the other things I had to deal with at this point was I pulled the head and discovered that although the pistons were really mint condition, the head itself had rusted. So I used a very fine bronze brush on a Dremel. My intention here with the detail in this window and the vacuum actuator for the windshield wiper was I was originally going to go back to that system, but when I decided to upgrade from 6 volt to 12 volt, I went with electric actuators on the windshield. So here we are, we're about to look inside the transmission there. You can see that main gear all the way on the right is heavily pitted. And what I wound up doing was I filled the transmission with oil, and then over the course of a week, slowly moved everything back and forth and cleaned it up. Those are the throw forks, and the columns, or the shafts that those throw forks ride on, had some pitting as well. So I used some very, very, very fine emery cloth to knock that pitting off, and now the thing runs, shifts fine. And I was given the advice from Carl Walk, and Walk's Jeep parts out of Pennsylvania. Phenomenal people, phenomenal products. Got a question, pick up the phone and ask them. I mean, you name it. But Carl's advice was basically transmission and everything worked together at one point. So stick with what you know, stick with what you have, because I was really contemplating going out and maybe buying an aftermarket transmission. Okay, so what I'm showing you here are a couple of spots in the tool bin underneath the passenger seat, and there are some holes where I guess jerry jugs, gas cans had been mounted. These were all things that I wanted to get filled in and addressed. I got that rust removed from the tool area, and again, I had a buddy who helped me out with all this stuff because I don't know anything about doing body work. So that's about it for this section. That's the head, as I mentioned before, and the real fun of it is in actually the last and third installment on this video during the assembly. And if you have any questions, as I said, feel free to email me or send me a message or something, leave a message